This is the April 26th meeting of the Board of Waterworks Trustees, 2022. On our consent agenda today, we have minutes from the March 22nd, 2022 Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting, minutes of the April 5th, 2022 Planning Committee meeting, financial statements, list of payments for March 2022, summary of CEO approved expenditures in excess of $20,000, scheduling our next meeting date as May 24th, 2022. That is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to move the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a second. Any comments or questions, Ted or board, on the consent agenda?
None for me, Graham.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes. This is part of our meeting where we have an opportunity for public comment. Obviously, with regional governance being top on our agenda, it's an opportunity for anyone to address or ask questions about regional governance. Is there anyone here from the public today who wishes to address the board on regional governance or any other matter?
We have no public with us today.
Great, all right. So with that, I'll close that section. We'll move to action items. Our first action item is item 3A. This is the 2022 employee health insurance renewal. Ted, I'll have you explain this before we motion.
Sure, Graham, thank you. What we have here before the board today is actually our first renewal since Des Moines Waterworks has joined with the Iowa Governmental Health Care Plan Trust. We joined the trust about 18 months ago, and the trust is on a fiscal year as opposed to a calendar year. So our first contract with them was actually for 18 months. Now they would, and we knew this at the beginning, at the onset, but they would like to move us onto the fiscal year calendar, like all of their other agencies. We're mostly cities and counties and operate on a fiscal year. So that being the case, we are going to have an employee benefits renewal here at mid-year instead of at year end, and that's what's before you today. What I would, a couple of comments I would offer to the board is that, again, this year we'll be offering employee health insurance through the same carrier. We'll be offering the same 3 plans that we've offered historically, those being a zero deductible plan, what I would refer to as a standard deductible plan, where it's 500 family, or 500 single and 1,000 family, and then a high deductible plan with an HSA. Those are all staying the same, same carrier, and the same split between Waterworks contribution and the employee contribution, which is a 90-10 split on the standard deductible plan, something that we changed to there 18 months ago at the same time that we went with IGHCP. We are looking at a 7% increase from IGHCP after 18 months of partnership with them, which it averages out to less than a 5% annual increase, which is very positive, we believe, compared to some of the increases that we had seen historically before joining with the trust. Down there in the fiscal impact box, you can see that represents a $49.90 per month increase in the Des Moines Waterworks contribution on a single plan, $123.75 per month increase on a family plan, or a total increase year over year of about $260,000 for employee medical insurance. We would ask that the board approve this continuation of working with IGHCP based on the rates and charges shown in the memo.
All right, so I'm seeking a motion to approve the employee health insurance provider rates for the period of July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion to that?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on this item?
I have a question for Doug Garnett. I want to put him on the spot just to see how it's been going.
It's been going really well. We've had really positive experience, so it's been a good change for us.
Good. Any bumps or things we need to know about or renegotiate?
Not at this point, no. I think we kind of worked through any initial challenges that we had when we made the switch to the trust, but everything is running smoothly at this point. So.
Good. Thank you.
Anyone else? So I don't know about you, but what I know about my own business and other businesses, this increase seems very reasonable to what others have experienced this year. I don't know if your experience or anybody else's experience is the same. It indicates to me that we made the right choice. All right, seeing no other questions, we have a motion and a second, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, that item passes. Moving us to item 3B. Item 3B is a conflict waiver consent to limited joint representation by Allers including PC. Sid, why don't you explain this and then I'll see some.
Absolutely, Graham. As the board is well aware, we have been working to develop a draft 28E, 28F agreement for regional governance of water production here in the Des Moines metro area, the central Iowa Waterworks concept. And an important part of that agreement will be the ability to fund capital projects and specifically the ability to borrow and to bond for capital projects. And so Rick Mullen with the Dickinson firm has been the primary architect of that agreement. Early on, it was clear to us that we would want to have a bond counsel review the bonding provisions that are contained within that agreement. We did reach out to Allers and Cooney some time ago, and they indicated that because of the fact they represent so many of the communities and agencies involved in this potential regional entity, first of all, they wanted to wait until the agreement was public and everyone had an opportunity to see it. And then they would need to get conflict waivers to ensure that everyone was aware that they were reviewing this from a technical perspective for Des Moines Waterworks. But in reality, kind of representing us all jointly to ensure that that the bonding provisions contained within this agreement are appropriate. And while they don't expect any conflict of interest to result, just based on standard practice, they felt it was important. There is actually a copy of the letter that they sent out. You can see they sent it not only to Des Moines Waterworks, but also West Des Moines, Urbandale Waterworks, and then the communities of Waukee, Hankey, Johnston, and Xenia Rural Water. Those are the agencies that they represent from a bonding perspective. They've asked all of those agencies, in addition to Des Moines Waterworks, to execute this waiver consent agreement, just to be sure that everyone is on the same page and everyone understands that they are reviewing this for us all collectively. So what we brought here today is permission we're seeking authorization from the board to execute that.
All right, so I'm seeking a motion to approve and authorize the chairperson and CEO or manager to execute the conflict waiver consent to limited joint representation to waive and consent at any actual potential or perceived conflict of interest associated with dollars and terms between PCs. Review of the draft 28 EDPAC agreement seeking to create the Central Iowa Waterworks. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second. Second. Motion is second. Any comments or questions on item 3B? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing no opposition, that item passes. Moving us to item 3C, which is the request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute the license agreement with Landis Cooperative for demonstration plots in the Waterworks Park. Ted, tell us about this.
Graham, this is a really interesting and I think exciting project we bring to the board here today. And as the board is well aware, we have recently been engaged in a number of cooperative initiatives kind of in the water quality space, trying to determine what we can do as Des Moines Waterworks to help plant seeds that will turn into significant water quality improvement projects. A couple of examples of that, I think you're aware of the Urban Ag Seeding Partnership, where we participated in purchase of a seeder that's going to be used to plant cover crops in our watershed, the non-operator landowner webinar initiative. This is another example of an opportunity that we have that we think could provide real benefits long term. And the opportunity that we have before us here is the opportunity to actually work with a trusted ag retailer to plant demonstration plots in Waterworks Park, to actually demonstrate best management practices from an agricultural perspective here in Waterworks Park. Landis Cooperative is actually moving their headquarters from Ralston, Iowa to Des Moines, Iowa. They're also moving their innovation center, which is kind of a state-of-the-art agricultural demonstration facility, to Des Moines. And they also need a place to demonstrate best management practices from an on-the-ground agricultural perspective. And given that they're moving into the Gray's Landing, Gray's Station area, we're close at hand. We obviously have benefits, or we all obviously have interest in demonstrating a best management practice from an agricultural perspective based on our interest in water quality. It's also an opportunity for us to meet producers, tell them our story, provide them education on water quality initiatives and concerns. And so we think it's a great opportunity to try these plots in the park, these demonstration plots in the park. Very small, less than an acre apiece. We got 1,500 acres. Far to the west end of the property, they're going to put 3 of these plots in less than an acre in size. Some of the detail there is described in the memo. Our grounds folks have worked very closely with their agronomists to ensure that it's not going to interfere with anything we do, to ensure that we're comfortable with the practices that they're planning to use. The Landis will be fully responsible for all of the efforts and the dollar costs associated with this. We plan to incorporate potential tours of our facilities with some of the folks who are coming to see these management practices, so we can tell them our story. But what we're asking for here today is the board's authorization to approve a limited license agreement with Landis Co-op to plant these 3 demonstration plots in the western areas of Waterworks Park this summer, and for one summer, basically this particular.
All right, so I'm seeking a motion to approve and authorize the CEO and general manager to execute the license agreement with Landis Cooperative for demonstration plots in Waterworks Park. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, any comments or questions on this initiative?
I but, you know, growing up in Des Moines and going to Iowa State, I didn't learn anything about cover crops and all of this until I joined this board. So when I was reading this, I was wondering, wouldn't it be great, to the next generation would better understand, all those kids that are from the urban areas would understand what these, you know, they're from an agricultural state, but what this means. So, you know, I started thinking, I wonder if we could have school tours and, you know, wouldn't that be cool? So any thoughts on programming kind of to, I know you said tours, but any thought on trying a whole new generation in understanding what happens with our watershed?
I think that we have a lot of possible projects underway that would fall into that bucket that you'll probably be hearing about in the coming weeks and months. I think this has a ton of potential and they're really excited. Melissa Walker's been helping me with this project with them and they can't wait for it. They were originally going to have like 24/7 cameras going on it just to have live streams. I don't think they're doing that anymore, but they're very excited, and yes, we can certainly have tours through there, we can have groups by those plots. They're actually going to have materials with them on their tour bus. They already have 10 tours that they're tentatively scheduling. And so they have their own bus, and they're gonna bring people over from their headquarters from all over the world, most likely, and they're going to be going by these plots. And so there's real opportunity for synergy back and forth between what is a watershed and what does the park do and what do we do. And then it's separate, but we're also possibly working on a project where we will have a permanent display in their innovation center about watersheds. So that's not for sure yet, we're still working on that one, but that's pretty cool too. So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
When you say their innovation center, you mean their location over in Gray's Landing?
Yeah.
I know that this is just a 1-year thing, but with its location, with the trail and everything there, is there any opportunity to get them to do some temporary educational signage right outside or right along? What's going on?
I think there's opportunities. Yeah, they're gonna have a kiosk outside of the plots where they have also a fence, and they're not used to working in urban settings, so it was really fun working with their agronomist and Jessica Barnett on our staff, and you know, they learned they had to put up fencing for, you know, all kinds of visitors, animal and human, and and then they're gonna have an educational plaque outside of the fencing,
Okay,
so
yeah, that's what I was like.
but yeah, I think there's gonna be opportunity if we worked with them to put more signage up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem very open.
You know, and we're on the world stage with the World Food Prize right here. And wouldn't this be a wonderful tour for those individuals that come in from all over the world, you know, to incorporate during the time that they're here? So it sounds really exciting.
I agree with you. I appreciate your support for doing more there.
I see Melissa just wrote that down.
Write it down so we can make it happen, hopefully.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions. How did we select that location? And I understand this is a 1-year license. Are we viewing this as kind of a 1 year, a one-off, or do we think there's potential to build on this, potentially do it for multiple years?
Yeah, great questions, Joel. I would say that the location, there were a lot of considerations there. We wanted the location to be, we wanted it to coordinate well with our operational needs in the park. We wanted it to be in a less used area of the park. Actually, there's kind of a high spot right there that doesn't flood as early and as often as much of Waterworks Park. And so we worked pretty closely with Jessica Barnett, to identify a good spot. It's far west, it's out of the way, it's not where people are trying to recreate, as an example. But it's along the road and has access that they need for their tours. It's a little bit higher. So those were kind of the criteria that we used, that were used to make the selection. We wrote it up as a 1-year license because it's so new, and we just don't know if it's going to work great, and we're going to want to do it on a regular basis. We don't know if we'll be open to it again. We hope so. We certainly hope that it's a positive experience for us and for Landis, and that it creates the kind of upstream, downstream partnerships that we think can be so valuable in helping people understand our needs from a water quality perspective. So we're hopeful that it will be more than just a one-year thing, but we thought it best to write it up as a one-year agreement. John Landy, legal counsel, did write the agreement, so it's all square from that perspective. But it is one-year agreement. We'll see how it goes, and at this point, at least, we're certainly open-minded to it being an ongoing initiative in the park.
That all makes sense. I thought of one other quick question. Maybe it's in here, maybe I'm not seeing it. Do we know what they're growing? What crops are we talking about? Or do we not know yet?
Corn and soybeans, and then I think one of them is more of just a cover crop, sort of a demonstration plot. But that's our understanding, Joel, is that one is corn and one is soybeans, and then one is more of just kind of ongoing cover crop demonstration.
And the chemicals and other things applied are all subject to approval by the Waterworks. So.
Yeah. Good point.
I was glad to see that, yeah.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing no opposition, that item passes. Moving us to item 3D, which is to request authorization to solicit bids for gallery, valve, chamber structures reconstruction. Phase 2, and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the May 2022 board meeting. Ted, I'll have you explain this one before I get a motion to.
Thank you, Graham. I know the board is well aware of the importance of our infiltration gallery system to the water supply here in Des Moines. The gallery system winds through the park, and there are numerous manholes that provide access to valves and affect the kind of changes in direction on the gallery system. Those structures were built, the newest ones were built in the 1930s, and so they all have some age on them, and they were suffering the type of deterioration that would be expected in a climate that has seasons, and structures, concrete structures, in some cases brick structures that are buried in the ground. A year ago, we bid a contract to repair a number of those structures. That contract is basically complete. It turned out very well. There were a handful of structures that were more technical, either because of their proximity to the road or their proximity to the ponds or other features in the park, and so those were sort of held off for a second contract, and this is that second contract. So design of the remaining repairs or essentially replacement of the upper section of the rest of those chambers. The design is nearly complete. We've got an engineer's estimate here, and we're looking for permission to bid that project. But before I hand it back to you, Graham, I do want to make note of the success in the first part of that process. And I hope that as you drive through the park, you can see that some of those older concrete structures that were decaying and in some cases cracking and had grass growing out of the top of them have been updated and turned into much more attractive structures that are clearly going to serve us well for another 100 years. So that's what we need to do with the last three, and we would ask for permission to authorization to bid phase 2 contract.
All right, so I am seeking a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for gallery valve chamber structures reconstruction phase 2 and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the May 2022 board meeting and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. Any comments or questions about item 3D? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing no opposition, item 3D passes.
Moving us to item 3E. 3E is a request authorization to reestablish the date of public hearing for the 2022 Des Moines Water Main Replacement Contract 1 as the date of the June 2022 board meeting. I think this is straightforward, Ted, but I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. The next two items, E and F, are actually both agenda items where we're asking to reestablish the public hearing. This one, the first one is Des Moines Water Main Replacement Contract 1. We had originally brought it to the board and asked for April public hearing, but because of issues with verifying utility information and some considerations that we want to make for trying to reduce the construction costs of this construction, we're actually asking to move the public hearing for this project out 2 months. And take the extra time and try to get that project designed up appropriately with better utility information and some modifications to reduce the construction cost. We're also going to move Southwest 9th out of this project. And you may remember we talked about this particular contract was going to be a number of streets that are, I would say, across the street from the zoo. Southwest 9th is obviously the main street there in front of the zoo. As we got looking at that, there are pretty significant traffic control considerations with getting people in and out of the zoo and making sure that we can move traffic north and south through there. So we want to do some more coordination with the city. So in June, we plan to bring a little bit smaller contract back to the board. We just ask that we reestablish the public hearing for this project in June this year.
All right, so I'm seeking a motion to authorize staff to reestablish the date of the public hearing 2022 Des Moines Water Main Replacement Contract 1 as the date of the June 2022 board meeting. Is there a motion to that effect? And a second?
Second.
And I hear a second. Any comments or questions on item 3E?
Yeah, Ted, would you just make sure that the CEO at the zoo knows that Ann's aware of the dates, because one of their big fundraisers, and it always says it's in the fall, Night Eyes, and they do a lot of things in the fall, you know, they have to capitalize on the water, so just, rather than just the city, make sure Ann's aware and she's involved with this.
That's a great point, Sue. We will definitely do that. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, that project on Southwest 9th, when we get to it, will require us to transfer the zoo's water service lines, at least one of them, to the new main. So there'll be a significant coordination that we'll make sure of that.
Thanks.
Great point. Anything else on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of item 3E, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing no opposition, item 3E passes. Moving to item 3F, which is request authorization to reestablish the date of public hearing for the 2022 water main replacement contract as the date of the May 2022 board meeting. Ted, anything to add on this one?
Not really, Graham. It's the same concept, a little different rationale. We're working with DOT on some right-of-way acquisition they're doing up on Northeast 22nd. It needs to get done, and we can incorporate that properly into our design. So that's more the reason, but the request is basically the same. We want to reestablish the public hearing for this contract as the May.
All right. So I'm seeking a motion to authorize staff to reestablish the date of the public hearing for the 2022 water main replacement contract as the date of the May 2022 board meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And I have a second. Any comments or questions on item 3F? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing no opposition, item 3F passes. Moving us to item G. 3G is a request authorization for the CEO and general manager to issue a purchase order to Superior Industrial Equipment for purchase of parts to rebuild Fluor Drive West High Lift Pump number 5. Ted?
Graham, West High Lift Pump number 5 is one of the pumps that we use to pump finished drinking water out into the distribution system. It's a 1,300 horsepower, 20 million gallon per day pump. It was actually installed new when I was in water production way back in 2003, and this is just another example of the kind of run and maintain sort of project that we need to do on a regular basis. Replacing a lot of the wear parts inside the pump. There's a rotating element inside the pump that spins continuously when it's running. Those things just simply wear out over time, and it's time to replace them. Pretty typical stuff, but we're bringing it to the board today because of the dollar cost. This is a $113,000 book of business here on the wear parts, the replacement parts on this pump. This is the type of item that's budgeted in a general way under water production's operation and maintenance budget, but because it's not identified specifically at the time of budgeting, we bring it to the board for your approval. So we're requesting authorization to issue a purchase order to the pump manufacturer, Superior Industrial Equipment, for replacement parts for West Highway.
All right, so this is, I'm seeking a motion to authorize staff to issue a purchase order to Superior Industrial Equipment in the amount of $113,270.43 for providing parts required to rebuild Fluor Drive West High Lift Pump number 5. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And I have a second, Joel. Any comments or questions on item 3G?
Yeah, I have a question that it probably goes to all of these things, and it's a general question as we move into construction and summer and doing all of these things and needing parts. What are you seeing on supply chain and costs and?
Great question, and I had an item in the staff comments today. Later in the document, we're going to talk about opinion of probable cost or the cost estimate for Sailorville. We were hoping to have that done. We had a meeting just yesterday though where they're still working on those costs. They're going over and over and over them because they're very high. And what we are seeing is that the costs of materials and labor are very high. And anywhere from 25 to 30%, which is the kind of increase we saw in chemical prices for this year over last, to as much as 50 or 100%, kind of depending on the specific material or supply or project. It's concerning. We're also seeing lead times, and I don't know that I would necessarily even blame them on supply chain or transportation or logistics, but just availability. We're seeing lead times for pumps and pieces. I don't remember if Nathan listed 23 weeks on some of the parts that we have listed here. And on the attachment that Nathan provided to this specific memo, there's lead time for every single item listed. And you can see there are things from 2 weeks all the way out to 23 weeks. We've seen lead times that were in excess of 50 weeks. That's an entire year to get a piece or a part. So we're seeing significant challenges, and it's interesting and troubling at the same time because it's hard to predict. Something that you used to go to the supply house and they would have them on the shelf is now 8 weeks. And something that you're worried is not going to be available is 2 weeks. So it's interesting times. Mike, Kyle, you're involved in a lot of these construction projects. Anything you would add to that?
We've had one example for a small generator we waited over a year to get, and we still don't know. They've told us about 5 times that it's another month out, and so we just don't know. It's really challenging to predict what do we need. That's an emergency item to have on hand for these things. But yes, it's very challenging right now, and costs are continuing to rise.
Go ahead. I was just saying, have we given any thought or talked about adjusting how we start scheduling some of our projects based on knowing that it could be half a year, 6 months to a year with availability? Maybe we can start engaging those projects or now to be prepared for when we actually are supposed to do them.
In certain cases, we are definitely doing that. And this item is a perfect example. You know, Nathan knew that there were gonna be long lead times on some of these items. This is a project that we'll wanna do next winter. So we're coming to the board, Nathan is bringing this forward and ordering the parts so that in low demand times next winter, we'll take the pump out of service and hopefully do these repairs. Another example is well rehabs. We've been running into real issues with getting the contractors to come on site and even do our well rehabs. And so we're trying to schedule those, think out a year in advance of which wells are we gonna wanna rehab in terms of our radial collector wells. I don't know that we've done a lot more of that. I mean, some of the things are kind of on an annual cycle, our water main replacement, so many of our construction projects, we do them every year, so have we tried to get them done as soon as we can, get them on the street? Yes, but we haven't specifically, backed all of our planning and design up 6 months as an example. We try to get ahead of it. We're trying to recognize it, trying to work through it. But I'm sure that there will be more that needs to be done if this continues.
Sure. And I think that leads to the challenge of, is this a temporary situation? Is this the new normal
Right.
in how you approach it? And I mean, it's with so many things, I don't know what the drivers are or whether they are going to continue or not continue.
One of the things that we saw very early on, was curious, was lumber prices went up so dramatically and then they came back down. They're still high, higher. In our meeting with the consultant yesterday, we asked this kind of question: are we trying to build a water treatment plant on a cost bubble? And he said, no, he doesn't think so. The costs are increasing, but they're not gonna go back down. That's their expectation. The costs have gone up dramatically in the last 2 years, but there's no reason to expect that 2 years from now, they're gonna level off. They're gonna go up and they're probably gonna stay. The other side of this question is, things we need every single day, chemicals and repair parts out in our distribution system, and maintenance parts across the utility. And we've been fortunate thus far, we're receiving the chemicals that we need to treat water on a timely basis, but there have been some challenges specifically related to chlorine-related disinfectants. So liquid chlorine, which we don't use anymore, and sodium hypochlorite. There have been some concerns that there could be a shortage. There's been discussion about could there be a shortage of disinfectant chemicals this summer. So we're keeping an eye on that. But at least thus far, we're doing okay. And then just periodically, there will be a chemical that, for whatever reason, is in short supply. And we get calls from the vendors about, can we take a half of it and manage it? So it's part of life now. It's this whole supply chain thing. It is impactful, but at least thus far, it's caused delays, but not more delay.
All right, anything else on item 3G? Hearing none, all those in favor of item 3G say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing no opposition, item 3G passes. I apologize for my assistant barking. I think some snow fell off the roof or we're under attack, I don't know that. Item 3H is request authorization for the CEO and general manager to execute agreement with Beautiful Lawns by Longs LLC for turf maintenance services for remote facilities. Ted?
Graham, we have a number of facilities across the metro, and some of them are a great distance from our main facility here on Fluid Drive. These are water towers, they are pumping stations. They are, in some cases, even smaller facilities than that, where we have turf that needs to be maintained. On a fairly regular basis, every 3 years, we bid a contract to perform the mowing at those facilities, and that's what we have here before you today. The most recent contract was bid 3 years ago. I'll Do It LLC has been our contractor for that 3 years and maybe even for the 3 years before that. This bid from Beautiful Lawns by Long LLC. They have not worked for us in the past, but they have done quite a bit of work for the city of Des Moines, and talking to the city, they gave them a good reference and are confident that they can perform our turf services for us at the remote facility. So we're seeking permission today to award a 1-year contract with the opportunity to extend for 2 additional years to Beautiful Lawns by Longs LLC.
I'm seeking a motion to award turf maintenance services remote facilities for Des Moines Waterworks to Beautiful Lawns by Longs LLC in the amount of $43,568. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second? Did I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on item 3H? Ted, when you said they have the option to renew, this is something, so if we and they wanna renew over the next 2 years, that's just kind of an automatic, something we don't put out to bid, is that, am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct, Graham. It's usually worded that if both parties agree, and so that, I guess it gives them the opportunity if they don't want to do it anymore. They wouldn't agree. We typically discuss whether or not they want an increase in cost, and if it's minimal or reasonable, we usually allow that. But if they want a large increase in cost, then we can say no and bid it again. But if we agree, we extend, and that's been pretty typical. And usually, we extend these for additional years because the contractors either ask for no increase or a small increase. That's been our history. And so my anticipation would be that it would be extended, but there is that option.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions on item 3H?
Had we previously taken care of this work in-house, or had we previously contracted out for it?
We have contracted it out for many years, and I'm confident that some of the facilities that are being mowed now have never been mowed by our staff. I would assume that some of them may have been in the past, but the challenge for us is the travel time and the distance between the facilities. And so it's difficult for us to do it as cost effectively when there's all the travel time. And there's probably more travel time than there is mowing time. So it's been a mix, Joel, but for the last many years, it's been a contract service.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on item 3H? Hearing none, all those in favor of item 3H say aye.
Aye.
Any those opposed? Hearing no opposition, item 3H passes, which moves us to item 3I, award 2022 tank painting for the Tenney Standpipe and Runnels Water Tower. And this is a public hearing. So I will now open the public hearing and see if there are any comments from the public regarding the form of contract, plans and specifications, and estimated cost. Is there anyone here from the public to comment, or Ted, have you received any comments?
Graham, we have received no comments.
All right. With that, I will close the public hearing, and I will seek a motion for adoption of the form of contract, plans and specifications, and estimated cost. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing no opposition, that passes. That motion passes, and I'll move to Ted for an analysis of the bids received.
Graham, we had a lot of interest in this contract. We did receive a large number of bids, actually 9 bids. And On the day of the bid opening, there were two of those bids that were not opened because of informalities in the bid. In one case, maybe both cases, the bidder failed to indicate receipt of the addendum that went out during the bid period. In what is a unique situation in my experience, it turned out that one of the bidders had not been added to our bidders list, and so they literally didn't receive the addendum and were not able to indicate that they had received it. And so after consultation with legal counsel, we determined that it was appropriate to waive that informality because of our involvement in them not receiving that addendum. The addendum was actually not an issue that would affect the price, and so that wasn't a problem. But we did subsequently recheck their bid and they were no bid. So we are here today to request permission to award this contract for painting of the Tenney standpipe and the Wilczynski utility building, which was one of the alternates, but not the Runnels water tower. The city of Runnels, based on the bids, has decided to reject all the bids and not paint their tower this year. But we are planning to move ahead with painting of the Tenney standpipe. That is the standpipe at Merle Hay Mall, which we talked about last month, and a small utility building that we have at the Wilczynski standpipe, which is our water tower that's located on Park Avenue near East 14th Street. There's a small building there that we're going to paint. We're looking for permission to award this contract to G&L Tank Sandblasting Utility LLC.
All right, and I'm going to read this motion, Ted, but just to be clear before I read it, the title of it is Tenney Standpipe and Runnels Water Tower Contract, because that's what was bid under, but we're actually accepting the option that doesn't include the Runnels Water Tower. That's correct. Am I stating that correctly, Ted?
You are correct.
Okay. I just want to clear up any potential confusion. So what I'm seeking is a motion to award the 2022 tank painting Tenney Standpipe and Runnels Water Tower contract to G&L Tank Sandblasting and Coatings LLC for the base bid and alternates combined in a total amount of $860,000, and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the contract. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second. And I have a second. Any comments or questions on item 3I? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing no opposition, item 3I passes, which moves us from our action items into our information items. And first on my list is the planning committee. Is there a planning committee report?
Yes, so the planning committee met and we received an overview of our affirmative action program based on the placement goals that were developed by a third-party consultant. I think what's interesting to note with that is that, you know, that is a federally dictated program, that it doesn't necessarily, or to say, our DEI strategic plan that we're working to develop our DEI plan is different from that affirmative action plan, where our DEI plan will be really looking at our internal practices. And that was something that I made note to know that there was a difference there, because I think what we are doing internally to look at our internal practices with that DEI lens is going to be really beneficial for us. So wanted to clarify that those are two different things. And then we also discussed the Floor Drive Operations Center stormwater system improvements, and had a great overview of stormwater basics, which I really appreciated, especially the history of the stormwater basics at the floor plant.
So we're looking forward to seeing the benefits of those improvements by the end of the year.
Excellent. Anything else from the planning committee?
We're looking forward to having our next planning committee meeting at the Botanical Center next month. So hope that many of you will be joining us there.
For good weather, that's Tuesday, correct?
It is Tuesday, yeah.
So the plan is the planning committee meets at 3:30, and that's a relatively short agenda, I believe, Ted, and then there's the plaque unveiling, if you will, that follows.
Right, Graham, the plan there is to have a fairly brief presentation on our proposed ground shop facility that is proposed to be located on the south side of George Flagg. We're gonna go through that, and then we are going to have a tour of the facility, the botanical garden, some of the outdoor spaces that they have created since our involvement there, and then the tour is going to culminate on the River Terrace, where we're going to unveil the plaque that they have installed, recognizing Waterworks' support over the years. We are, I believe that the Botanical Garden Board is going to join us for that, and we're also planning to invite a number of our employees who have either worked at the Botanical Garden when we were responsible there, or have been a part of the ongoing maintenance operation that we've provided to the garden here in the last 10 years. So we're trying to recognize those folks. They are as much who the plaque and recognition is for, as much or more so than even the financial support. So we're trying to pull it all together, and I promises to be an enjoyable event if the weather cooperates. So we shall see.
We shall see. Great, so next we move to the Finance and Audit Committee report. Joel?
If I recall right, we did not have a meeting this past month, so nothing works for me.
That makes it a very easy report.
I like easy.
That's right. I'll let Andrea and Ted and maybe Jen comment in a minute. The Bill Stowe Memorial effort has been interesting. As I've reported to you in past months, in many respects, the pause button that we hit for the pandemic was really helpful when we thought about what's possible in doing something in Bill Stowe's memory. We have incorporated, or there has been a 501c3 incorporated in the name of the William G. Stowe Foundation, with the idea that that foundation is going to pursue a number of educational and outreach opportunities in the years to come. The first of which begins this summer, and the Stowe Foundation is funding a number of interns, Lakeside Labs interns. We'll spend a couple of weeks up at Lakeside Labs, and then they'll be in Des Moines for most of the summer, looking into a number of questions about opportunities in the park. And this goes a little bit back to our conversation about the Landis project beginning in the park this summer, thoughts about Lakeside Labs, and a whole host of other conversations that Jennifer Terry and Polk County Conservation and many other people have had about cooperative efforts, if you will. And so the Stowe Lakeside Labs interns will kind of act as a first small step in doing some research into answering some questions, including working with the Isaac Walton League to think about their future and their interest. Polk County Conservation, the list is numerous to do those things. And so what's interesting, as I say, about the pause button, and this is much more than the Stowe Foundation, is that we're at this moment where there's a lot of interest in doing something on environmental and water education being home-based at Waterworks. And Andrea has volunteered to kind of take a board lead, if you will, in some conversations on this, working with Jen Terry and obviously Ted to figure out what those next steps are. And, those will include obviously the park foundation and the groups that I've talked about, the Stowe Foundation and others. And so it's an exciting time and one that, thanks to Andrea volunteering to do this, one that I think we can move forward and keep. The tricky thing here is, as you all will, I think, will agree with me, is that Waterworks has a vested interest, obviously, in what goes on in our park, but also in forwarding water and environmental education and outreach issues. But yet, we're not necessarily the lead agency in those things. We can be a place where we bring those things together. And so I'll stop talking and see if Andrea or Ted or Jen want to add in, but I'll just say it's an exciting time. And the next steps are going to be figuring out the plan to take this whole thing forward with a host of potential partners. Andrea, Ted, have I forgotten something?
I think you covered a lot there. I think this goes to what Sue was mentioning earlier on taking advantage of things that are happening in the park and making those connections to education. And it's a perfect time at this moment to utilize our partners, leverage our partners to do just that without overextending ourselves. But still being that educational leader, or playing a role in that educational leadership. I'll turn to Ted or Jen if there's anything more you'd like to say.
My only comment is there seems to be a lot of energy around this educational concept, and I'm confident there's a diamond in there somewhere. We're gonna find it.
Yeah, as I say, I'm excited about it, and I appreciate all the work that's gone on to getting us to this phase. And now the next kind of hard part is organizing it and keeping it organized so that we can move forward. And obviously, our board needs to be kept informed and involved and make sure that it fits our mission, not only what goes on in the park, but our other pieces of it. But I am confident with Andrea being at the table and working with Jen, good things are going to happen. So I couldn't be more excited about that.
The only comment that I have, and I think we maybe talked about it several months ago, is that there's a lot of things going on. And we want to make sure that they're all coordinated. So does it make sense to collapse some of these things to make sure that they're not going through one committee here and a right hand, left hand kind of thing, and think about how to get that, to make sure it's coordinated?
Absolutely.
Truer words have never been spoken, and that's exactly, Andrea and Ted and I met just before this meeting, and that's exactly the same thought that Andrea was expressing and Ted and I have been expressing. We want to make sure that this is a coordinated effort. We're not duplicating, and more important, and as important, we're not leaving things off the table. Andrea, did I interrupt you?
You took the words right out of my mouth. And I don't have much of the voice, so it works well.
Thank you. It's hard to know because on my screen, you guys are about a centimeter tall, so I can't pick up the facial expression, so I'm sorry. Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden, everybody try to get to the meeting on Tuesday. You'll hear about great things going on there. I don't need to take up any more time on that. You'll learn about that on Tuesday. Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation, Joel or Andrea, any updates there?
I'll just share that they're continuing to chip away at their fundraising and did receive a $100,000 pledge, I believe, this month that came in, so that's exciting, kind of builds that momentum as we head into the concert season. And there looks to be now that with things kind of getting back on pace, a good schedule and lineup of activities. I don't know if anybody wants to touch on this.
I have a question for you on that. It was troubling when I read in their report about this surprise sound ordinance that was presented to the city council. The foundation is relying on these concerts
Absolutely.
for the revenue, and for that to come out of the blue. I was curious, first of all, what were they trying to do as far as restriction of time? Do we know what the time frame was? And then secondly, I was surprised that there were 2 council people that supported.
Yeah, so the Park Foundation has been aware of this ongoing sound issue, and there was a plan to put up, what do we call them, sound monitors? Over in that area of the community to kind of measure, the decibels and the length of the sounds during some of these concert seasons. And so this is going to be a measured, intentional investigation of this sound problem that I think we were well aware of. And when the amphitheater was constructed, they had built a speaker system that was highly technical to figure out how to contain as much of that sound as possible. But there has been ongoing concern from the neighborhood of the sound issues. It sounds like from what we were reading in the paper that they've kind of moved on from that. But I think that one council member has been involved in these sound issues from the beginning. I don't want to interpret what the city council did without a clear understanding. It sounds like it's done, it's over with as far as this ordinance, because it didn't have the support to pass. But I don't know if Ted or Graham, we were having a conversation about this last week. Do you have anything else to add?
Well, one thing that I can share is that the change that they were proposing was to shorten the length of time that concerts could extend into the evening. And so we already terminate or end our concerts at 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and at 10 p.m. on any other night. And the change that was proposed was that the concerts at Waterworks Park only be required to end at 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and 9 p.m. any other night. And fortunately, the foundation became aware of that. They became aware of that through immediate inquiry, asking, what's your perspective on this, and is that going to be a negative to have to end so early in the evening for a concert? And so they were able to have a representative attend the meeting and speak to that. And I understand that 2 council members did vote in favor. At the meeting, the rest voted in opposition of that change, and so the change didn't pass. And the foundation and their promoters were very concerned that the window of time for concerts would have been a negative, and it would have been a kind of unusual thing, and that something that concert goers would not have expected and probably wouldn't have appreciated. And so they're fortunate. I don't know if it's over. I'm not aware of any other initiatives to change the ordinance, but I have heard from the city that they do intend to clarify that the sound measurement and compliance with the ordinance will be based on sound that's averaged over a very short period of time, like maybe a minute or 3 minutes or something like that, as opposed to instantaneous peaks in sound that last only for 1 second. That has been a question. We've heard from a member of the city council that every concert is violating the ordinance, but we've never been advised by the city that there's been a violation. And so I think there's a difference in perspective. There may indeed be an occasional spike throughout a concert, but the information that we have seen, that I finally got yesterday and was able to share with Graham, and I don't know if he's had a chance to look at it, but the tracking that they did showed that the sound was well within the ordinance at every concert where they tracked the sound. The problematic concert in August, unfortunately, didn't have the tracking available. There's some consensus that they probably did violate the ordinance at that concert. But we believe we're meeting the spirit of the ordinance. They're still concerned in the neighborhood. The plan is to do monitoring that Andrea mentioned and try to ensure that we stay within the ordinance. And move forward and have events and so.
You're right, we are counting, the Park Foundation is counting on that income from those concerts. And it could be very significant, I think, to shorten those timeframes.
So with this recent information that you have, that you've shared with Graham, are we going to go back to those two council members that voted against it and make sure that they know that we were within the ordinance?
Yeah, I think there's two things too, in my opinion, that I've been talking about with other people, and Ted and I have talked about, and Andrew's talked about. First is that the ordinance is clear and everybody understands what a violation of the ordinance is. And I think that the clarification that Ted just made, that they're gonna, average it over a minute, over 2 minutes, and that's the that's the standard that's gonna be used. That helps, occasionally there could be a feedback moment, or a motorcycle gets picked up on the concert stage, and it gets carried. Those intermittent ones you can discount, but is there pounding bass that goes on for 2 hours, and what is that level? But so, first of all, understanding what the ordinance is and what a violation is, and then the Park Foundation as promoters are going to do a better job of tracking the sound this summer and knowing where the problems are. So getting agreement on what the ordinance is, and then agreement on what constitutes a violation. If there's a violation, what we do to prevent that. I think that's the first step in going back to two council members who were upset. I mean, I think that you're going to get a call. You're probably going to get a call at every concert from some neighbor about sound. And I'm not saying that they're not correct, but living in an urban area, you're going to always have some sound, and hopefully the benefits of having concerts outweigh the negatives. But you're hit the nail on the head. So I think we have to continue to communicate with all of the council members to make sure that we're not violating the ordinance, and we're collecting the data that everybody can agree on.
Do we know if those sound monitors, I apologize that I don't know the answer to this, those sound monitors differentiate between sounds? How do we know that they're only capturing concert sounds and not the motorcycle going down the road, or the traffic, or the trains? There's also heavy train traffic in that side of town.
The monitor.
I'm sorry, I think some of that is that, average per minute. I mean, some of those things that you're gonna be able to weed out because they're momentary. A motorcycle going past, for instance, is one.
I'm concerned about the trains though, because they're loud and they're long.
That's an excellent point.
I have a question about the ordinance, and I haven't followed this as closely as I should. It applies to all venues around town?
This ordinance that was being proposed would only apply to Waterworks Park.
And why is that? I mean, a lot of neighborhoods, like the State Fair neighborhood,
Or the Riverview that just put up their new.
that just put up, I hear the fireworks at Principal Park on all those evenings, and just realize that's part of what they do. I don't like them, but other people do like them, so. But it just seems like some selective enforcement. I mean, we all live here, and we all have to put up with some things. I really, since I'm on my bandwagon, I really hate 4th of July fireworks that go on forever, and the city doesn't do anything about that. So it does seem like, there's a lot of, I don't know if they have monitoring equipment at those other venues, or if it's been proposed that those other venues.
I think I'm on the same bandwagon that you are, and I think this is an excellent point, because I continue to say, we can kind of get through the next couple of years. When that soccer stadium is built across the street, the things that happen in Moines Waterworks Park are going to be far less in creating noise than what goes on in soccer stadium.
And
But your point is well taken, and that is to make sure that Waterworks Park is being treated on the same level as everyone else.
And are there multiple neighborhoods? Is it, you know, Southwestern Hills and Owl's Head and, are there multiple neighborhoods or is there one neighborhood that primarily has the issue?
I think it's primarily Al's head, but, you know, there are times where I can hear, we can hear a concert, if it's the right level of humidity and the wind's blowing, we can hear, you know, the concert in our neighborhood off of 42nd Street, north of Ingersoll, but, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we live in an urban area, and these are good things.
Thank you.
Anything else on the Park Foundation? All right, unfortunately, we move into the next item, which is not exactly all good news, but Ted, I'll let you talk about the saleable opinion of probable cost.
Yeah, Graham, I had hoped that the opinion of probable cost was gonna be done by this board meeting, but unfortunately, as recently as yesterday, we met with the consultant, they continue to work and massage and go back to their partners, their construction partners who they work with, and we don't have the final numbers even yet today. But the thing I can share is that the numbers are very high, and this is back to Diane's perspective on supply chain and costs, and we're looking at numbers for expansion of the 10 MGD expansion of the cellular water treatment plant that are well in excess of $100 million for that expansion. In fact, in excess of $150 million potentially. So that's a very high number. I can't get more specific than that because the work just isn't done and it continues to fluctuate up and down a little bit. But as they continue to finalize those, I think that's an important discussion that we need to have with our regional partners. I want the board to be aware that the numbers are high. It's not entirely due to inflation and the billions of dollars literally of construction money that's available, and how busy the contractors are and all those kind of things on the one hand. There are also some things specific to our project related to our knowledge and experience with the plant, things we need to do a little differently going forward, some design considerations. So there are a number of drivers there, but the costs are high, and I want the board to be aware that they're high, and that's probably going to be an important consideration in our discussions about regional governance. So I apologize for not having more specific information today. We just don't have the final numbers yet, but we're hopeful to have those here within the next week or two. And we may have even received something today. I hadn't seen it.
I haven't seen it from Mark yet.
Okay. So we met yesterday. He was hopeful that this week we would have something to share. We just simply don't have that. But understand and be aware that the prices are high. But the prices are going to be high for any construction. So it's not a case of this project is number one. But, Graham, I think that's what I'm able to share today, unless there are questions, more specific questions.
Preview of bad news.
Yeah, not unexpected, but not good.
I hear you. External affairs.
Jennifer is here, and I don't know if you'll be able to see the podium, those of you who are virtual, but we can. Jen?
Yeah, I have one topic today, but it's a big one, federal policy. So our staff and our government relations teams are meeting with state and federal agencies, attempting to understand if there are opportunities for us to access any of the money that has come out and will be coming out from DC. So our Woodbury Associates Government Relations team tells us this is arguably one of the largest infrastructure funding packages in decades. It could affect us for the next few years. So it's really important that we do our best to try and navigate our way through these. I told a colleague it's sort of like a Rubik's Cube. It keeps clicking and has lots of sides and changes every day, and then it's dipped in uncertainty. So it's just been a lot, and we continue to try and figure it out. So there's two main pots of money. One is the American Rescue Plan money that came out last year to the municipalities. So that is still floating around out there in our state and our region, and our municipalities locally are trying to figure out how they might disperse some of that, maybe in partnership with us. Also, there's the upcoming bipartisan infrastructure law funding that's going to be coming out, and so we're also trying to understand how that's going to look for a utility like ours. So As I said, there's a lot of uncertainty, not only with us and other utilities, but also with the agencies that are gonna be funneling those funds from the federal level to the state. So the key areas that we're working on for the utility are lead service lines, infrastructure funding, water quality projects, source water quality projects, and then PFAS and emerging contaminants. And at the same time, we're trying to figure out all of those buckets. We also continue to educate our congressional delegations and partners that we're different because we're independent and board managed. Our customers own their lead service lines. And then Des Moines is not necessarily classified as a disadvantaged community. And so those are some really important pieces with this federal money that we're finding need to be, some wrinkles to be ironed out. So I'm grateful to the staff, and also it's been wonderful having advocacy strategies at the state level, interacting with Woodbury at the federal level to try and help us, help guide us through these. So we've been having meetings with our congressional delegation, the Iowa Finance Authority, the Department of Natural Resources. Last week, we had a meeting with the city and the county that went really well about some of these funding possible partnerships. Tomorrow, some of us are meeting with the governor's office as an update and to see what the state's thinking about some of these funding opportunities. And then in addition to working on those issues, we were able to pull together a proposal and several letters of support for a community project grant that we submitted to Congresswoman Axby's office last week. And a huge shout out to Amy Kaler and to Woodbury Associates who helped so much with that. And then Rachel Brown for getting it out the door. So we couldn't have done it without them. So that is pending. We'll find out more about that probably in mid-May. And then Ted is going to tell our story about regionalization during the Greater Des Moines Partnership DC trip. So he'll be doing a presentation on regionalization, but I suspect there may be an opportunity to talk about some federal issues as well. And then on May 10th, we're hosting Woodbury Associates and Advocacy Strategies at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting so that they can give you a more in-depth expert summary of what's going on with the federal policy issues. That's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Can you
Any
give us,
questions?
yeah, can you give us a little idea? I didn't understand the grant application that you just put in.
Yeah, I can't give you a ton of description about it, but there is a window of opportunity that fit well with our utility to apply for a grant that was to be used for hazard mitigation. It was a very particular little piece that in Congress they're working on the House side. And so we submitted a proposal for the gallery valve replacement project actually. So we're gonna proceed. If we get the funding, great. If we don't, we've still gotta do it. But it turned out to be, we split it into two parts, but altogether I believe it was something like $770,000 that we submitted. And so it has to go through lots of hoops to be approved and all those things. So we'll see what happens today. Yes.
I think so. Thanks, Jen.
And that leads us to you.
Graham, thank you. Just a couple of comments for me. I'm gonna ask Michelle to pull up the strategic plan initiative tracker that we put together. And this is gonna be something we'll share with the board each quarter. And we're gonna post it on the utility. You can see that each of these graphics represents one of the strategic initiatives we have underway, and then the tasks or the KPIs within each of those initiatives are shown. So you can just kind of get a graphical representation from this quick visual of how we're doing. There's progress on most of these initiatives, in some cases quite a little bit of progress. These are the first year initiatives. Many of them are multi-year initiatives, and so we'll be talking in more detail about some of them as they come along and we make additional progress. But this is just kind of a quick visual, a quick look to see how we're doing, and at the end of the year, we hope that all of the bars will be to the top and all the towers will be full. You just realized there are water towers, isn't that? Rachel Brown worked with the folks at HDR to come up with that graphic, which is way out of my league, but the blue bars are rising up the tower, kind of commensurate with how much progress has been made on each of the tasks. So some of some of the initiatives just have one or two tasks. That engaging the community actually has 6 tasks within it, so you can kind of see as we go through. It should be just a quick look, something you can look at pretty quickly, and then have the opportunity to drill down into those in more detail as there are questions. But I don't have any specific updates right now. I will mention that Voice of the Customer, we're going to do a Voice of the Customer survey this year. That's something we haven't done for a number of years, but we have the consultant hired and they're getting started in May. We're going to have a couple of focus groups and a number of phone interviews. That's listed on there. We also have a diversity and inclusion initiative this year, which Andrea had already mentioned when she talked about the planning committee, but we have selected the consultant who's going to help us with that initiative, and we're having an initial meeting with them next week, so that's just getting started. We had a great team from across the utility who got together and helped us pick that consultant. Had some folks involved in that who hadn't had that kind of opportunity before. I think it was a great experience, and it was a great experience for us too to have some diversity of opinion on that selection process. So that's the quarterly strategic plan update. I will also mention that the rivers are up. I think for the first time in like 30 months, they're above mean, which is good. With rising levels comes rising nitrates, so we're seeing nitrates above 10 for the first time in about 30 months also, but still not at a problematic level. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on again. With the water comes the nitrates, so we're keeping an eye on that. And then the last thing for me is I would just encourage participation if possible in the event at the Botanical Garden next Tuesday, which I think is going to be a neat event. And then also I think that F&A discussion where Woodbury and advocacy strategies are going to help us understand all of this federal money that's available in all the different programs and how they interrelate and what we may have access to and what we may not. That has been a confusing cauldron of acronyms for me, and hopefully they can bring some clarity. And that's on the 10th at Finance and Audit. So I know not everyone has that on their calendar, but if you want to write it down and you have the opportunity, that might be an interesting one to attend. So Graham, I think that's it for me, unless there are questions about any of that. Diane has a question.
I have a question, Justin. Can you give an update on regionalization? What communities have passed the resolution where the 28E agreement is and its review, some time frame, what we're looking at there?
I absolutely can, and thank you for asking that question. Sometimes you're so close to the flame you can't see it. So I apologize for not having that on the list. First of all, in answer to your first question, there are 13 communities involved. We asked them all to pass a resolution indicating their intention to participate in the 28E agreement. Every wholesale customer of Des Moines Waterworks, with the exception of Warren and Rural Water, has passed the resolution and is reviewing, as we speak, the 28E agreement. So all of the communities who are wholesale customers, plus Grimes. And as you will recall, Grimes has been at the tables all the way back since our strategic planning, our long-range planning process in 2017. In 2017, we reached out to all communities in Central Iowa, including the Mitchellvilles and the Carlisles and the Wintersets and the Indianolas and the Grimes, and said, hey, we're doing a comprehensive long-range plan. Do you want to be part of this analysis? And Grimes was the one that said yes. They were the one non-customer who said, yeah, we want to be part of it. And so they have been since the very beginning. They're also part of the regional initiatives and all the modeling and everything that we've done. And they have passed a resolution and they are participating. So everyone except Warren Water. Warren Water's rationale is they're so large in geographic extent, they are uncomfortable with the exclusivity requirements. They may someday want to purchase water from Indianola or Winterset or someone else. They want to leave their options open. We did encourage them to bring that as a comment, and they just said, nah, we're just not interested. So, everyone else is interested and at the table. As you know, immediately following the board meeting on February 22nd, we did issue the draft 28E to all of those partners. And after a month or so, we reached out and said, okay, now that we've had a month, we want to offer the opportunity for you to visit with one of our staff and legal, with your staff and legal, and just ask questions and get additional information before you make your official comments. Those meetings have started. We met with Xenia on Friday, we met with Clive today, we're meeting with Norwalk tomorrow, and so on. There's a whole series of those scheduled. We had originally indicated that we would like to meet with them in April so that they could provide initial comment by May 1st. But schedules just didn't allow us to get all those meetings scheduled by May 1st. So I think we're actually into the second week of May before we even have all those meetings scheduled. But I'm confident that within the month of May, we will have initial comments from every interested community. I will offer that the initial meeting, the comments have been very constructive and positive. And hey, this looks good. What about these, dozen or more questions or small changes? No one has come forward and said, this is just simply unworkable. We can't be a part of it, which is good. So I think we have a good, solid agreement. Kudos to Rick for all of his effort on that. Our team is Amy and myself and Rick. If they bring legal counsel, if they don't bring legal counsel, Amy and I are meeting with them to just kind of hear their comments. We'll consolidate those. The plan is to collect all those comments, try to consolidate them, and then moving forward, like we have a larger sharing session where we share with everyone what kind of collective comments have been, and then begin the process of working out the questions and negotiating. I will say that we got a little bit of feedback specifically from West Des Moines that, hey, there are a lot of operational questions. How is this really going to work? As a producer, how do we get paid? When do we get paid? How do we get approval for capital repairs? And we may have to have some storyboarding sessions with West Des Moines to ensure that the structure of the thing works and we all understand what's going to happen on the day that we have a $117,000 repair we need to make to a pump. Who approves that? Those kind of things. So, Amy, would you add to that?
I really, just a point of clarification for you, Ted. Have we heard from Polk City that they approved the resolution? I'm not sure they have.
No, we haven't. That's a good point.
So it might be Warren and Polk City.
We haven't heard that they have opted out.
Correct. And we presented and.
We went there, we presented it, I think it was well received.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, we haven't actually received that. I kind of checked them off after a good meeting, but that probably might be she's my conscience.
Can you talk about the public outreach and what the consultant is going to be doing? Because, we have to be clear, the consultant that was hired was for the overall, right? So then everybody has to do their own messaging on why is this good for us, or where's the benefit to us? And I'm not sure everybody's really clear on that.
We worked with West Des Moines and West Des Moines Waterworks and Urbandale Water Utility to hire a PR consultant jointly. And we have just begun what we're calling the discovery sessions with that consultant, where we've had some initial meetings with them, but they've scheduled some discovery sessions with the staff and the various utilities to understand potential areas of concern and how we're going to move this forward. Jen might have more specifics on where we are with that right now.
I think you accurately described it. We're just entering the discovery phase. We have had meetings with the CEOs of those three, Dale, Christine, and Ted. And to your point, I think what the consultant's going to do is come up with messaging for the region but it's going to be really closely aligned with what Christina's audience needs to hear and Urbandale's and ours and so on. And so I think they're gonna try really hard to make them mesh together.
Do we think the boards for West Des Moines and Urbandale are aware?
Yes. And we do believe so.
We haven't personally made them aware, but we certainly.
I think we need to circle back to that. Diane and I had coffee with West Des Moines and Urbandale, and it was still kind of unclear. And keep in mind, John is just getting back in town, so I don't know how often Urbandale has met, but we didn't want to take that too far as the understanding of what this overall constitutes. So I think we could maybe to all three boards clarify the role.
Sure, I know that Christina was gonna talk to at least a couple of her board members about attending the discovery session, so. Yeah, we can help provide some clarity, I think.
The other thing that's ongoing is community education. It's ongoing through offering to do presentations, and we've been doing a lot. And we've been doing some of them jointly. Christina and I have one next week, I believe, for our breakfast club in West Des Moines, the Glen Oaks. And then I think Dale and Christina are going to do one. But we've done numerous breakfast clubs, Rotary clubs, service clubs of all types. MPO, we did both the technical committee and the policy committee, both of those. Graham had the opportunity to meet with CCI and visit with them.
Yeah, I did. I'll comment on that. They did a Zoom session, which was very well attended, and asked me to speak. I gave them I used a PowerPoint that Jen and Melissa had put together and adapted it for them. Really good questions and interest. I didn't get any red flags from them about opposition to this. Their concerns are similar to all of our concerns, right, about rates and protection of the water source. But I think at the end of and all the comments that I received either personally before we closed out the Zoom or in emails afterward were complimentary and supportive of the project. So it was a 90 minutes, 2 hours well spent. The one thing that, Sue, I was going to say, really to everybody, I think one thing that all of us can do as board members or even staff members at Waterworks is we talk to decision makers here, whether they're board members, city council members, or what have you. I think what we want to make sure is that the process keeps moving forward. And Diane, you hit on this right at the beginning. Making sure that people understand we're in this comment period. Now's the time to review the document, make sure if there are problems, we're talking about them, so that we can resolve those over the summer. So, the attorneys can get to work. Joel, thank you. So that the attorneys get to work so that we can sign this document in September. So anytime you have an opportunity to kind of make sure people understand the process, are having their voices heard, and understand that we want to start signing this in September so we meet that deadline, that would be good work on all of our efforts. Especially if you have a law partner, Joel, who's on another.
The
Last
last
one, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's all we have, unless you have anything else, Ted or anybody else.
Graham, I want to add one more comment to the regional discussion. And the last big constituent group we have, of course, is employees. And we've got a couple of them here tonight. We've been trying to keep them up to date, trying to answer questions. Honestly, I have some concerns that maybe they're not asking the questions, maybe they have them, they don't ask. And I talked to Bill and Dee, and I said, Bill stepped out and maybe had to go, but encouraging them to have people ask questions if they have questions. It's fairly impactful, or could be 20 years from now when the initial operating contract runs out. But we've really tried hard to keep them informed and do something that we think is good for them. And so I don't know if you have any comments about level of concern or awareness of regional governance
I've been trying to share with you each week that we meet, and,
Yeah.
any concerns that I hear, but I haven't heard any lately.
I have clarity of it. At first I was confused and had concerns, but you and I talked about it in the meetings, and I got clarity of it, and I'm with it.
Good, thanks, Opie. Appreciate that. And, my message to you and Bill, of course, is if there are concerns, let's talk about them. I try to be honest with folks that I don't know how it's gonna turn out 20 years from now. I can't see for sure what's gonna happen 5 years from now or even tomorrow, but tell them what the plan is and what's in the agreement. Make sure that everybody's aware, whether they're comfortable or like it. It's another story. And I think that's the end there, and it's the sermon on that.
All right. Anything else for the good of the cause tonight?
I was thinking about the noise ordinance. I live in the neighborhood. I'm in the southwest neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is most people are surprised, when it first come down.
Yeah.
And then probably the music, it wasn't their brand, it wasn't their era. So
Yeah,
it's quiet, nobody says nothing in my neighborhood.
yeah.
When I hear
And you're
something,
south of the park, right, Obi?
I'm southwest 35th.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah.
If you do hear any concerns, be sure to let us know.
All right. Anything else? Hearing none, thanks everybody. We will adjourn this meeting.